In this video, we are going to be talking about the film noir from 1947, Crossfire, which was directed by Edward Dmytryk and starred Robert Ryan, Robert Taylor, and Robert Mitchum, the three Roberts. And we are also going to be discussing whether or not the social commentary in this film was a good mix within the genre of film noir. And my guest today, I would like to welcome back Aaron Pynn, and he is also a film YouTuber. Aaron, I'm so glad that you can come again and discuss another noir with me.
I always enjoy our chats, man.
Yeah, me too. No, absolutely. So when we were thinking about what to pick, you had suggested Crossfire. This is a film that I've always loved for many, many years, but I was curious as to why this is a film you really like.
Well, for me, it's another one of the 47s, which is a great year for film. But basically, I grew up a lot on film noir. So all the films that I've been choosing are films that I saw first in my childhood, that I searched out when I got a bit older, and that were in a lot of those Warner like film noir sets. And I used to love the fact that when I'd get those sets and I'd put in a movie and I'd be like, oh yeah, I used to watch that when I was a kid. This one particularly because it goes back more so to the Born to Kill, and this is a much more of a rougher film noir.
Yeah.
It has some different like ideas and concepts that were pretty much ahead of its time that I thought would be interesting to chat about, and it does do some different things with the genre. And so far I've been trying to choose things. Well, the second one is like pretty much standard. This is what noir is, which is out of the past. When we talked about Born to Kill, we talked about tyranny, and we talked about a lot of different like kind of how forward thinking it was with some of the stuff that it did, and its violence and its portrayal, and how it like flipped the script when it came to certain characters. Well, with this one here, we get that again. It's like I mentioned to you just before we came on camera, is that this is a movie in search of elite. We have so many great like actors in this film here. We got Robert Young, of course, from Marcus Welby. He was Marcus Welby later on.
That's right.
That was his big thing. And of course Mitchum, who again, as always, complained about the role, said anybody could have done it.
Yeah. And
the most liberal left actor that was ever on film, Robert Ryan.
Right.
Playing about as against type as anybody will ever get, because anybody
and so brilliantly as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so different.
Yeah, no, it's a phenomenal performance. Also, Gloria Graham, she considered this one of her favorite performances, and she got an Oscar nomination for it. And something I wanted to touch on later was her husband in it, Paul Kelly, this like unusual relationship that nothing is really explored within that, but it's so intriguing just for those few moments in there. And of course we have Sam Levine, who is the man who's unfortunately killed Samuels. And just in case anyone hasn't seen it, the plot, according to IMDb, is a man who was murdered apparently by one of a group of demobilized soldiers he met in a bar, but which one and why? It's actually a really simple, like in terms of the sort of whodunit aspect of it. It's very, very simply told. The police officer, and I've seen this film a few times, and I forgot how good Robert Young is as Finley. I mean, what a performance. And he plays this really calm, clever police officer so well. And if it wasn't for the fact that Robert Ryan said one too many words, and that really let Robert Young as Finley the cop know that there was a motive here, because he's saying something anti-Semitic right when they met, and that was enough of a clue for them to follow. But how do you feel about this mix of this being a social commentary film, of course, about the ignorance of anti-Semitism or of hatred and bigotry of any kind, with the film noir? Did that did that really work in your opinion? I mean, we don't have a femme fatale. The purists would say, you know, without a femme fatale, it isn't a noir. I mean, what do you think?
Well, we kind of do have a femme fatale in what Gloria Graham's character, sort of. But I think it works because actually, if you look at a lot of noir, like at the end of the day, like a lot of like noir, like heroes or heroines end up, you know, dead or you know, in jail. But a lot of them are kind of message pictures. When you kind of pick them apart,
yeah,
they make the wrong decisions, they do the wrong thing. But this one takes it in a stronger direction. So the book that this was based on, because the guy that wrote the book was a famous writer and a famous director.
Yeah, Richard Brooks.
Exactly. And so he, the Brick Foxhole, I think it was called. But in the book, it's not a Jewish character. It's a gay character.
Yeah, I read that this morning.
Because of it's homophobia.
Right.
But you couldn't do that in 1947. So they went with anti-Semitism. And that wasn't something that you could normally do either, especially when you put it around the fact that it was a serviceman that kills them. That got them into some pretty hot water back then. It was the first film against, you know, anti-Semitism. At the same time around there, and it came in a little bit later, Gentleman's Agreement was also being filmed.
That's right.
So that would have come out, I think, a couple months later after this one. But this was the first. And one of the reasons that I chose this, another reason that I chose this, to be honest with you, is because you're an actor. You do acting. You're an acting coach, and we both love acting. And this has some of my favorite monologues and some of my favorite little performances all throughout this film. You could take little scenes, like snippets out of this movie, and show them in acting classes. Paul Kelly sequence, Gloria Graham sequence, the hatred is a weapon, like a gun, that Robert Young says. There's some great speeches in here.
Yeah.
Like if you're an actor, watch this movie. There's some great monologues for acting.
There really is. I was even thinking that, particularly that speech from Mitchell towards the end when he's trying to show the guy from Tennessee why it's probable that it was Robert Ryan who did this because of his bigotry. And he talks about his grandfather being killed purely because he was Irish. And that was such a great speech, done so simply, so beautifully. The movie it's a short movie, but it just flies by, and not because it's plot driven, but just because it's so captivating. And I think a lot of that has to do with the performances. Even George Cooper as Mitchell was another actor that, he played the guy who's so troubled, is so lost, he doesn't know what to do with himself. His sense of vulnerability was just spot on. I just thought it was flawless.
The true lead of the film is Mitchell, and we don't really get to meet him straight on until later. We get to see parts of him, but I adored aspects, a lot of aspects of this film. But my favorite scene is Paul Kelly's scene. They could have easily taken that out of the film and had, wouldn't have made much of a difference, the payoff at the end, but they could have done that a different way. They didn't really need that scene. But I think that Dmytryk saw his performance and kept the scene because of that performance. It's so haunting, and it's so well done.
It's great.
It's almost
great.
like.
Are you referring to his first scene or the second scene where he's with Gloria Graham?
Oh, the first scene.
Yeah,
the first scene. Or as some people say, if anybody sees this now and see it for the first time, it's the Dark Knight scene, like the Joker, where he tells his story and then is like, no, that's not my story. This is my story.
Right.
And the most pathetic of his stories is actually the one that's real.
Yeah.
We find that out at the end. But he was so good. And all throughout this, when he was on the screen, Gloria Graham, and she doesn't have a large role in it either. She comes in later when we meet her, and she has that sequence at the bar when they go outside. And then we get her again near the end of the film. But So the performances in this movie are so spot on.
Yeah,
and
I
so
agree.
good. Even Mitchum does a different type of role here. Still, he's more
Very
I'd say
different.
laid back, but not as laid back as you normally
Yeah.
see Mitchum. Even though he complained, and a lot of that I think is 100% Robert Mitchum pretty much doing his thing where he's like, yeah, anybody could have done that, and that's because Robert Mitchum has this kind of like laid back sort of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Humility
Yeah.
to him. So
Yeah,
a lot of times when I think,
Yeah, he did. He was quite good. I mean, it's not as flashy, perhaps, as Out of the Past with that, that great dialogue that he has, that very film noir stylized dialogue. But he was still really effective as someone trying to, figure out who did this by working with the police officer. But just to go back to the character, the Gloria Graham's husband, what's so interesting about that scene is when he's there, at first you think, oh no, he's a criminal, or he's the jealous boyfriend who's going to kill, or maybe even a pimp. I mean, you're not even quite sure who he is, and then you find out that he's just this guy whose wife doesn't love him anymore, that he's just so heartbroken, and he keeps changing his story in that first scene. Oh yeah, well, she's my wife. No, she's not my wife. I've been trying to get with her, but she doesn't like me. And then, of course, in the second scene, you don't know why she says "I hate you" to him. You really don't know why. And I really love when movies do that, when you have these characters and they're more ambiguous, and that there's just those loose ends, which, life is just full of loose ends. There's not always necessarily clarity and closure with everything. And you're right in the sense that it wasn't totally necessary. I mean, the whole function of, if we're just looking at the plot, is that he could have had an alibi as to that he was with Gloria Graham, but he was there not at the same time as the murderer. But I mean, who cares? I mean, for me, I'm like, it's such a great relationship. Why not let it take hold of the moment? Why does it have to have some kind of connecting of dots of a plot? I mean, it's really about these people. I mean, that's ultimately, I've seen this movie a few times. What I always remember are those performances, are the characters, not necessarily how they caught Robert Wyan and stuff like that. I don't know about you.
It's a character study. I mean, like, it's really a character study.
Touching on just the cinematography, I mean, of course, it has that the shadows and the dark lighting. I mean, it literally looks like, this was really low budget. It literally looks like all they were using was the lamps, natural lighting. I mean, sometimes you see how they had all the lamps on, right? And it casts the shadows, and, it just made it look so eerie and dark. I mean, it starts with that murder right off the top. It's just the lighting in this film, whether it was part essential because of the low budget, or also they were utilizing it part of the story. I mean, it just works so well.
A bit of both. A bit of like background when it comes to the film itself is Dick Powell was initially supposed to be in the lead.
That's right.
Robert Young took the part, but Robert Young had to do it based on basically say, okay, I can do it, but I can do it for this number of days. This film is shot actually pretty quickly, so he actually had to go out there and let go the cinematographer that we had and hire on a guy that was more, they'd been around for a while. He was older, he was really good, and he could shoot fast. And they needed somebody that could shoot fast. So when you look at how this film is done and how it plays out, and realize this was shot really quickly, this was one of the last film noirs that I think, now don't quote me on this, that was actually shot in studio. Like we would see, like, the past, you look at stuff like that, even that's 1947, that shot, we actually see locations. Everything here is shot on already created sets. Yeah.
It's also mostly interior.
Yeah, like even the supposed outdoor scenes. It's all sets.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're just like anything outside was like right outside of the building of the apartment building towards the end. So was probably a lot easier for them to do that on a set, but you can't tell. I can't tell at all. But
that's one of the amazing things about the film.
Yeah.
And it's so good, and it builds up so well. It has a nice crescendo. Like it's like in music or in slasher films, for instance, when you try to build to that beat, and if you do it really good, then you get to that like suspense, and the suspense builds till it's almost unbearable. That's what you want to do. And you get that sequence near the end of the film where he's going to help them set up Robert Ryan's character, Montgomery, and it's so well done, because here's this like little guy, and the way they shoot Ryan too in the film, they shoot him so imposing, especially during that close to the end sequence.
Yeah.
And we get this. They're at the they're basically at base, I guess, and they go to do the shaving. He says, "Oh, I saw you. I saw."
Oh, I love that. It's all in one shot with the mirror. He's in the mirror, and it's great.
And you feel for this guy, like he's got the razor in his hand. They're walking around. He's going into the other room. He's like looking through stuff. And there's this sequence where he gets the address and it hands it over to Ryan, and Ryan drops it to the floor.
That's right. And scary.
When he goes to pick it up, it's like they shoot Ryan like kind of like he's so imposing, and he's such a big
from the ground looking up.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful shot.
Yeah, cool. And it makes you wonder whether he realizes he's being set up or not, or if he's suspicious, because he can easily just kill that guy if he thinks that he's working with the police. So, but obviously their plan, it was so clever. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but their plan just worked so well. I mean, I thought, because the whole time when they realized that, they're pretty certain it must have been Ryan, because he was the only one who had any kind of motive. Everyone else hardly knew this guy, and like I said earlier, Robert Ryan said he said a few words too many to show that he was an anti-Semite. And you don't necessarily know what the plan is, but all at that point is that they have to get proof. They couldn't, even if they arrested him, they wouldn't be able to prove it. So, but if they tell him to go to this address and he shows up at, like, again, I don't want to spoil it, but they just nailed it. I mean, he was such a good cop. Yeah.
Did you get the feeling that he kind of knew, like pretty much like Columbo? He knew all the way. Yeah. But he just had to get to the point of like.
It's very Columbo. Like, I mean, you see the way he reacts when they're talking, and then he goes, "Oh, well, the type," and he's like, "Oh, what type is that?" He goes, "Well, the guys who are living it up, they get out of the yard," and you can see by his reaction, he knows. He's like, he just like there wasn't time to really address it because they're still going after the clues on Mitchell, because his wallet was left at the crime scene and stuff like that. But you could just see the wheels start turning.
So I wish I could say that like times have changed. Sadly, they haven't.
No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this film holds up. It really holds up. I mean, it's really relevant. To kill someone purely for who they are, from their religion, their skin color, whatever, where they're from, everything that he was saying to the cop says to the guy from Tennessee at the end about what they thought about his grandfather. All the Irish are here to take our jobs. I mean, you still see that. And he was talking about something from the 1800s, and that's still so relevant.
Hate's so easy. It's so easy to hate.
Yeah.
It's hard to accept. It's so easy to hate. Even like the shots, like where we see him at like at Sam's house. And this is like an early kind of like a PTSD thing too, because he's really.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And Samuels addresses that to him in the bar. He seemed to be sensitive to what the guy was going through. Of course, you find out later he was a veteran as well. And he's like, yeah, you spent the last 4 or 5 years thinking about winning the war. Now the war is over, and now what? You don't know what to do with yourself, and also you're reeling from the trauma of what you experienced. And that really stuck out. I mean, I don't even know if they would have talked about anything in terms of PTSD back then. I don't know if they used that. I don't know if was that something they talked about?
I don't know if they used that terminology back then,
yeah.
but it was like, was people that had issues, I guess, after the war. Like, and this was, back then, it wasn't like even as where the Vietnam War, where people came out and they could like groups and stuff to talk about stuff like this.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the point, and it kind of like foreshadows what's going to happen with him himself, because literally he's like, okay, you go over to this war, you're taught to shoot these people, hate these people, this is the enemy, and then you come out, and who's the enemy now? What do you do? Who do you hate? Where do you take those? Where do those emotions go? What do you put them on? And it's so easy to put them on something else. So with Robert Ryan's character, he's a bigot,
right? And
he looks at this guy, that played by Sam Levine, and he's wrong completely. But his character, he thinks, he was never in the army. He thinks he's not. He's a coward. He's not a hero. He's just, all kinds of, there's derogatory terms that he uses.
Yeah.
But he's completely wrong.
Yeah.
And he was in the army, and he was taken out because he was injured in Okinawa. What's really neat when it comes to and I don't know if you saw the same way I did, but there's a scene where he's at Sam's house, and he's seeing things all blurry.
Yes.
And
the POV shot. Yeah. When they're arguing. Yeah.
And some people see that as like he's drunk. I don't. There's a scene earlier on where he says he's getting drunk, but he's not drinking. And I see that as the PTSD and the anxiety that he's having from all this. Like, he's really going through a lot. So his mind, his vision is blurred, but not through drinking, not because he's super drunk or anything like that. Just because he's super anxious. He's super it's getting to him, and all the negative stuff that's being put out there by Ryan and the aggression. He has to get away from it. He can't. We're meeting this guy. We find out, one of the first things we learn about Mitchell is he's an artist. He's so we got a guy that's an artistic soul. Someone's going to be a bit more sensitive. That's not happy with his lot in life right now, with the art that he's having to do at this point. And he's at the bar, and everybody's drinking, but he's not really drinking. But he's worse. He looks worse off than anybody here. Anybody at the bar that's half drunk or half cut, as we say here in Newfoundland. But when he gets to that point, and they're all drinking, and he just, I gotta get out. As someone that used to have panic attacks when I was younger, that's what I took it as. I didn't take it as, okay, he's like really drunk and he's gonna throw up or anything like that. I took it as, it was like, things were blurry, things were, he couldn't deal. There was just too much coming down on him. All he wanted at the point was his wife. Yeah. And we saw how that goes. But that was it was a shot that I wanted to talk about because it was so well done. And I think that especially now, with so many people that deal with PTSD and people that deal with anxiety issues or panic attacks and stuff like that, that it's something to know when you're going in to watch this film, because it really gives that sense. And that it's amazing that this film is so far ahead.
Very far ahead. Yeah, that's a good, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I did think about the fact that that he was going through PTSD, but that shot in particular, I also just thought, it's a POV because he's drawing down what he saw at that point and what he didn't see. But that's a really good observation. And speaking of the fact that this was ahead of its time, I mean, the director, one thing I read was that as we said before, Dmytryk was part of the Hollywood 10, and that was part of the reason why they think this film didn't get the same recognition with awards as that, say, like Gentleman's Agreement got. But the irony is, Kazan was someone who testified and named names, but I don't think that had happened yet. Because that was in the early 50s by the time they got to Kazan. But at this point, there was a lot of controversy around Dmytryk and the Hollywood 10, so it was brushed aside.
Yeah, like he had a career afterwards, but not as good a career.
Yeah, not as good. Apparently, he was teaching. He wrote books, and stuff like that.
Well, Kazan was probably more infamous for what he for his part than him, because when it came to like Dmytryk, when he said, he just pretty much just reiterated names that other people already said. There was no new names that came out with Dmytryk. But it's a hard position to be in. Like I can't imagine. Like I applaud Trumbo for being able to be the guy that he was and still have the career that he had. But I can't imagine, like, there's this witch hunt going on, and it does not again, things are cyclical. Like, things come around again. We get stuff like this now. You can make parallels to things that go on today.
I was even saying, I wrote a post on my Instagram and Facebook for my acting classes about Robert Ryan, because I don't think Robert Ryan, he's been dead for a while, and I don't think a lot of people, younger people, know him as well nowadays, but just an absolutely phenomenal actor who, like I said, he didn't have a phony bone in his body. Everything he did was so honest, yet so simple, and he was just incredibly truthful in everything that he did. And this, to me, is one of the best things he did. This and the setup, or another noir, is just like unreal.
He almost regretted this,
I didn't know that. This pretty much, like, it steered his career. He played this role and this type of role really well. Yeah, he did.
He did it many roles like this.
He started to get more like the villains, I suppose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they asked him, they said, like, he wanted to do this role. He was one of the few people in this movie that actually was in the military. So he knew this. And when they asked him, hopefully I can use the language, he said, let me do this role. I know son of a bitch is just like this.
Yeah.
Like he knew. Like he saw these people. He knew people like this. He met people like this when he was at war.
Oh, I'm sure he did. Yeah, and that's a testament to a true actor, that maybe he doesn't like that character he's playing on a personal level, but he knows that ultimately he's telling a story about which is the greater good, which is the message is hate is wrong. Don't hate. And so if he has to be the person who hates then that's fine, because telling the story is not saying hate is good. It's saying hate is ignorant and wrong. Right? Yeah. I even think of like other, Marlon Brando played like his character in Roots and Burn. He was, playing like really savage people, but in stories that had similar themes in terms of, hate is ignorant, hate is wrong. And that's all that matters in the end, for you to have been contributed to telling that story as effectively as you could. And of course, the more effective you play it, the better it will be. And I'm totally convinced that, he's so convincing that you think that's who he is. It's,
exactly. Like, he does an amazing job. And it's such a layered role too, like, because he plays the army part really well. Yeah. Because here you got a guy, he's in civilian clothes, and it took me a second to realize he was in civilian clothes, but he still has his tie in, like it would be when he was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like, and I said, is he still wearing his army suit? Because the tie's in, like, that's what they did in the army back then. And like, no, they actually mentioned that he's in his civilian clothes, but he's wearing army-like clothes. He has a certain type of like way that he talks to other like police officers, stuff like that, which seems kind of respectful in a way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But as you slowly start to see it erode as it goes through, how scared he is, and what a scared like little person that he is. He's a big guy, but he's just inside. He's just this little like scared bigot.
Oh,
and
yeah.
As the movie goes through, as it spirals to its ending,
you see that.
We see. Yeah. We slowly get to see his true colors.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I've met people like this in real life myself, and that's really the way that it is. It's like they're loud. Like I think I mentioned this another. They're really loud, but they're really small.
Right.
And his character is like that, and he does such a genius job. And I think the reason that he wanted to do this was because he didn't want somebody to come in and do a caricature role and just, because you can pass that off. You can pass off a caricature role because, oh yeah, nobody's really like that. That's too much. That's too over the top. But Ryan went in with this to do a role and to bring to life remnants of different people that he'd met, so that it couldn't come across as a caricature, so that it comes across as a more fleshed out character.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that when the audience is watching him and is watching the role that he's doing, they have to think, they have to reflect, because they know people like this, because he's brought this character to life. And he's like, yes, there may be your uncle, maybe your brother, maybe like your neighbor, or someone that you passed, and you just hear them down the road. Okay, Karen, that one, that type of thing. Yeah. But that's the thing. He wanted to play this role, and I think that's the reason that he wanted to initially play it, is because he felt that if another person with this role, it would have came across like just a character, like just a flat 2D character, and he didn't want to do that. Yeah. He wanted to make people think.
Yeah, no, very well said. And I think from the kind of actor he was, he certainly would have totally committed to it and approached it as if he was that, guy. I don't know where he found it within himself. I mean, no one knows. That's really up to the actor, but he certainly found his way in, and it was remarkably effective. And this is his only Academy Award nomination, which is hard to believe when I look at how many great performances.
Yeah, because he's done amazing work now.
Wild Bunch, Dirty Dozen he was in, The Professionals, The Setup, as I mentioned, he was in, he gave some phenomenal. Clash by Night, On Dangerous Ground. I mean, he was really, really great. So if anyone hasn't seen either this film or anything else with Robert Ryan, highly recommend checking his performances out. Any final words on this film, Aaron?
Again, I think we've done like a pretty much a trilogy of what I call near perfect films. Yeah. And this one definitely fits the, if there's anybody that has not yet seen Crossfire, 1947's Crossfire, it is a brilliant film if you want to learn about writing, if you want to learn about acting, especially if you want to learn about acting. Watch this film, watch the performances in this film, because every single one of these are pitch perfectly well done. There are speeches, there are monologues, there are things you can use for acting in this, and it is genius when it comes to that. And the message still stands today. And there's one sequence in there where when he's talking about like hate, and he's talking about that, you know why you can't carry a gun, because like hate's, and I'm like, oh man, maybe we should go back to those days.
I was thinking that, yeah. I was like, well, you know why we don't let people carry? I was like, wait a minute. Did they have stricter gun laws then? I thought, I guess they did. I don't know. That was true. That did really pop out to me. Yeah. Oh my God. To think 74 years later, things can be so backward in some regards. But yeah, a fantastic film. You can watch it. It was on the Criterion channel, but you can watch it for free again on archive.org, which is a free streaming service connected through a library system. So I'll leave the link in the description box below if you want to check it out there. And Aaron, yeah, thanks again. I'm glad that we did, we did another noir, 3 from 47. Love to have you back again to discuss more.
Anytime, man. I'm always
great. No, I'm glad you are. And you can find Aaron on YouTube. His YouTube channel is in the link is in the description box below. He mainly goes live. And how often do you go live, would you say?
Not as much now as I used to. I do I do a lot of live. I'm trying to up my game when it comes to the live now, especially, but I'm trying to switch things up a bit. So lately I'm doing different types of videos. And my last one was a video where I took the slasher franchises And I see everybody do top 10 lists. They do top 10 lists, top 20 lists. You got Watch
Yeah.
Mojo.
There's a
all those
lot of that
things.
stuff. Yeah.
And you get people ranking stuff, and they'll come on like, okay, this is the Friday 13th franchise. These are my thoughts. This is the top 10. This is me ranking all of them. So I didn't do that. I said, everybody's done that. Like, that's been done a million times. I said, so what I did was I made the list of the films, and I said, I'm taking it to the audience. I'm taking it to the viewer. And I went live and I said, oh, we're going to make a list. We're going to rank all of these films here, but I'm not doing any of the ranking. It's you guys. You guys vote, you guys choose, and the viewers decide. So I thought it was something different, something cool.
Yeah, that's a good idea to have the audience almost involved in the creation of your videos. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So yeah, once again, the link is in the description box. And if for anyone who hasn't been on my channel before, please consider subscribing. Right above my head here, you will see the Robert Bellissimo Movies logo that is to your top left. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release a new video or when I go live on my channel. Thanks so much, folks. I will see you soon.